Hey everybody, everyone's heard of General Assembly. It's the new urban campus for entrepreneurship, technology, and design in New York City. They're having unbelievable events there. We're going to learn about it today because we have one of the founders of it here today. Join me in welcoming Brad Hargreaves. Brad, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
David, thank you.
Tell us about the inspiration for the whole idea.
So General Assembly really got started when several people came together, myself, my co-founders, Adam, Matt, and Jake, and we really started thinking about the startup environment here in New York City and what it needs to really be taken to the next level. There was a lot of fragmentation. There was a lot of people who were working on things separately, independently within their siloed industries. And there was really no central place for a lot of what was happening. So we started working, I'd say in early 2010, on this concept for a space. And we realized really quickly that the space wasn't the full realization of the concept, that there was something more there, specifically that there was a need for not only space and not only community, but also education.
Tell us about the team. I'm going to guess you know Matt Breimer from Yale.
It really started with Matt and Adam thinking about this concept on different tracks. Adam thinking about it more from an educational angle, Matt from more of a community angle. Matt and I were working together more on his concept, and then we met Jake fairly early on in the process. He kind of brought a business perspective, an adult perspective, more so you could say, to the team.
But tell us a little about the model, because I understand it's sort of a membership model, which is fascinating to me.
We say that we have two tiers of membership. One is our dedicated members, and the only reason they're called that is that they have a dedicated desk in the space. That is, they have a place they can show up to every day that they know is theirs. The other side of that is the communal membership. The communal members work out of the central lounge at General Assembly, as well as our library and our other spaces. So everyone who's a member can come and go whenever they please. We have, it's open 24/7.
So if I want to be a communal member, what would a monthly cost for me be?
So communal membership is $300 a month.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the programming you guys do. I want to tell us about, software development, design instruction.
Right. So from a macro view, we really see a deep need for more education in technology and entrepreneurship and design. So we set out to create a robust curriculum in those verticals. And we're at a pretty early stage in doing that. We have about 2 to 3 classes a night. We're in the process of adding classes during the day and on weekends. And the classes are really centered around practical education. And to give you some examples of some of the classes we've started with, Adam Dino and Salim Day, partners at Wilson Sonsini, came and taught an amazing course on the essentials of startup law. So really looking at all of the facets of the law that an entrepreneur needs to know to get started on the right foot.
I know that you're going to have some tracks, educational tracks coming down the pipe. Tell us a little about that.
One thing that we're doing over the next couple of months is we're taking all those classes and we're structuring them into tracks that allow someone to ask, what are my goals? What do I want to accomplish? And then we'll deliver them a set of General Assembly classes or course series that will help them achieve those goals. So if someone who's non-technical says, I want to learn how to program, we'll have a set of classes that are upcoming in a certain track that will allow them to achieve those goals. And we'll have similar tracks, whether it's in front-end, back-end development, in design, and also in various areas of business.
I compliment you guys on that. Terrific stuff. Let's switch gears though. I want to talk a little about your blog. bhargreaves.com, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. It's one of the more insightful and deep looks at entrepreneurial culture that I've seen. I'm a big reader of your blog. Recently you had a blog post that was entitled Entrepreneurship is the New Art. And if you haven't read it, I really recommend it. Tell us about that concept.
I think a good way to look at it is in the context of financing and fundraising. There are an increasing number of investors I meet who are looking at entrepreneurial investments, that is, investments in startups, similar to the way people looked at an investment in a Broadway play 20 years ago, which I find fascinating.
That's actually the genesis of the term angel investor. The angels are on Broadway, right?
Exactly. And I think you're now seeing that come full circle with a number of investors who put the financial goals of investing second or third behind helping the world and bringing change, and also just the social benefits of being involved in the technology startup world. I think that's very interesting. It's certainly not the case with all investors, but it's a trend I've seen. And I know an entrepreneur in particular who likes to say that he is an artist and Delaware C corporations are his canvas.
Another blog post that really caught my eye was culture is vocabulary. It's the way we speak to each other in the startup community, but especially within a startup company. Please describe some of the thinking that went into that, your observations over the years.
A lot of people misunderstand what culture is. Culture, as I see it, is less about the big things like a company dinner or going bowling together or what have you. It's actually more about an aggregate of very little things. So how I frame my sentences, how I address you, facial expressions, and various language that I use when engaged in a conversation, especially a disagreement. And the aggregate of those things over time, the language, the posture, etc., actually influences the way a team gets along or doesn't get along, much more than what people traditionally bucket into company culture.
Give us an example of a typical phrase that you might hear that might be better expressed.
Right, well, I think a great example comes from improv comedy. Improv comedians are trained to, let's say you are a fellow improv comedian and you say something completely ridiculous and not at all where I'm going. My trained response is to not say, but here's this other thing, but actually to build on what you said, even if I'm saying something totally different. So if you say, the sky is yellow, I say, yes, and it's very blue as well. So I change the direction of the conversation without saying, no, it's blue.
You keep the conversation going.
Right. It's often less of what specifically we say and the points we're making. I've had many examples during my life where I realized that I'm not actually arguing with someone. We're simply using the language of an argument. And if you actually sit down and look at what each of us are saying, it's not that different.
Let's dive back into what influenced, a lot of these thoughts that you've had, and that you put in your blog. I know you went to Yale. You were one of the founders of Yale's Entrepreneurial Institute with Jim Boyle, who was a good friend of mine, and you started Go Cross Campus. Correct. Tell us a little about that experience.
My very first venture, which started, I believe, my freshman year of college, we would buy antique furniture from Yale. Yale was getting rid of a lot of its old card catalogs and things like that, and we would sell it on eBay. And we actually built an online e-commerce site eventually for this, for all this furniture from various Ivy League schools, and grew a business organically from there. Transitioned out of that, really ran out of furniture about my junior year and started Go Cross Campus.
Now, as I recall, Go Cross Campus was a game that began to spread across universities around the Northeast. Am I on the right track?
Correct, yes. So Go Cross Campus was an online game driven by the rivalries of college students. So our philosophy was, if you're an Ohio State student, you're going to enjoy playing an online game against a Michigan student more than some random person online. We built a business around that. It gained a lot of user traction. Unfortunately, college students are very hard to monetize, and we were doing it at a particularly bad time in 2008. So we faced a lot of challenges with that business, despite the fact that we had earlier raised some venture money.
Yeah, this is great, because tell us about some of these challenges, because we love to hear about what went wrong and how you dealt with it, etc.
Right. Well, I think the real challenge was that we had no formal business experience, and we had very little informal business experience. We had been given a lot of venture money, about $2 million in all. Really did not think about monetization and making money from it at all. And unfortunately, when the money dried up, we didn't really have the revenue base to keep going. And there were a lot of challenges through that whole process, and it was really one of the darkest points in my life when we had to lay everyone off and close down the company. But there's an odd thing of, once you become an entrepreneur and once you get deep into it, it's very hard to do anything else. It's very hard to go back to a more corporate, traditional lifestyle. So I just started playing around with projects. I started working on things. There was one small gaming project in that I started that got some great traction. And I took a role as an entrepreneur in residence at Tipping Point Partners, which is a small incubator.
That's here in New York City, right?
Yeah, it's here in New York City. They're down in Tribeca. They're a very selective, small firm, and was there for about a year, and left in October to be one of the full-time founders of General Assembly.
Tell me about what were some of the profound things that you learned through the Go Cross Campus experience, et cetera, in those years.
I really learned that you have to be strategic and you have to focus on the end goal. That's so critical. There was so much I did during that process that was focused on the next month, the next 3 months, and part of that was because we were literally always raising money. We were raising money straight for a year and a half. And when you're in that, there's no way you can make long-term decisions for the business.
Listen, I want to thank you very much. Are you able to come back on the show in a few months and give us an update on what's going on at General Assembly?
I'd love to.
Thanks a lot, Brad.
David, thank you.
Good to see you.
Venture Studio in association with Mashable is brought to you by Square One Bank.